Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm back and we're on board and ready to get stuck into this bilge work. Let's get this done and dusted and out of the way. Right, so the first job today is I've got the hoover out. I've put the vacuum bag attachment into there. I'm going to hoover out all the dust in the bilge and have a look to see what the grinding was like that we did a few weeks ago. See if I've got all of the right areas, if everything is prepped well enough to start laying glass. Then we can get some fiberglass out and have a look at what we've got and start cutting up some templates. Right, let's crack on with some hoovering in the bilges. My Sharpie has just gone up the hoover. I've just hoovered up my Sharpie. I think it's going to be in here. There it is. Note to self, don't suck up Sharpies with the hoover. Right, so I have now hoovered out all of the bilges and we can see how it's looking and I'm quite impressed. It's looking really good. Everything's nice and clean down here and dry. I seem to have reached all the areas that I need to reach. So the general plan now is to begin laying some glass before we put support in. So I'll be laying here first. I'm going to cut a piece of glass out that will fit into that area there, and lay that in, two if necessary, depending on the thickness. Then I'll lay a piece from here all the way across and up here, maybe just lip it up onto this edge. So that will tie these pieces back together. Epoxy will be poured down into these cracks, so these will be sealed back up as well. Coming up to here, to begin with, I will just go to this edge, and then once we've got the thickness of glass on the bottom, I'll put tabbing then down here onto the new glass there. But before that, I want to glass up these sides up to about here, probably about where these, just off camera there, just about where those holes are there, roughly, which is going to add strength to this part of the keel. Now this keel isn't loose, but I'm going to do it anyway. But on the other keel, which is loose, this is the weak area. So we're going to be a couple of layers of glass up here like that, and that will overlap the base piece of glass here, and then we'll have tabbing on here. This is a hole that just goes into foam underneath the floor. It's all dry, so I'll just glass over that. And then in this bilge as well, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to put a piece of glass up here to this level where you can see where I've ground to here. Sort of stop there, which will just add strength to this area. Piece of glass up here. Again, this is the floor in the bilges, and there's foam here, which again is all dry. So I'm going to put a piece of glass over there. Not really worried about up here, so that will end there. And I'm not going to go too deep because this is all going to be filled with foam and then glassed over at the end anyway. And then if we just move around to the other side of the boat, essentially exactly the same over here. Fill in that piece first, new piece of glass across there, and then coming up here. You need to really pay attention to getting a good finish here to add the strength. And then once all that's done, tab in the supports all the way up there, those there, and then fill this with foam, glass over it. So yeah, lots of glassing to do. I'm really happy with how this has come up. You can see there is one of the original fixings. Let's see if I can zoom in. There. That is one of the original stainless steel fixings. So when they put the keels on, they pop these little tiny bolts through just to hold it in place while they did the glass work. So that's quite interesting that I've revealed that, and it's still in place. It's been covered up for 50 odd years. So that's the plan. And then once we've got glass laid in the bilge, we can start putting in our bilge keel support to strengthen everything down here. But not going to worry about that at the moment until we've got loads and loads of glass here. So my first step is going to be to go and cut some templates for this area here. I'm going to see if I've still got the pieces that I cut out, because even though I've ground it out a little bit more, they can still be used as a good template, certainly for the first piece. So I'm going to go and see if I can find those. I could bond those back in, but I'm not sure on their condition. I'm going to go and find them and have a look, and either use them as templates or maybe look at putting them back in. Let's go and find them. Well, I found them here. So these are the two pieces that I cut out of the bilge. Now, they're not in the best of condition. You can see this is the one on the, which one's this? This is the port side. And you can see these are the cracks that I'm going to fill with epoxy. And it's in quite a bad condition, as is the other side. So I would have to grind all this down anyway to put it back in. And they're not that thick. So by the time I've ground down both sides to put it back in, there won't be much left of it. So I think I'm going to use these as templates. I'm going to cut some of my nice thick combi mat fiberglass out and lay in new sections, rather than use these old pieces that I've already cut out. Plus then I know that it's good and new and secure, and everything's going to tie in really nicely. So glad that I've got them, because I can template off them. But that one's thinner. It's quite interesting actually. That is the starboard side, and it's a lot thinner than the port side. See how that barely bends? And this one, it's really bendy. So I wonder whether there was a discrepancy in layup from the factory between port and starboard. You can see the thickness difference there, which might be why my starboard keel is loose and my port keel is solid, because there's a big difference. In that layup. That's quite an interesting little find. So that fills me with a bit of confidence that perhaps what I'm doing is going to work, and it's going to nicely strengthen up the keels, and we're going to be good to go. Right, let's go down the ladder. I set up a table down there. I'll get my big box of fiberglassing stuff out and get the cloth out, and we'll have a look at making up some of these templates and cutting some sheets of fiberglass ready to start putting it into the bilge. This is the moment we're waiting for. Months and months ago, I was working on my wife's car in this workshop. She's got a Mini, and the door wasn't shutting properly. And I was trying to figure it all out and adjust the window, and the window smashed. The glass went absolutely everywhere. And that was months ago, and this workshop has been swept and hoovered dozens and dozens of times since then. And I've just found two pieces of side screen glass on the floor of the workshop. It just goes everywhere. And it just shows that it doesn't matter how many times you brush the floor and clean up, you'll still find bits of glass. Where's my bin? Who's moved my bin? It's over here. Right, let's get my big box of fiberglass. My big box of fiberglass has been sat there for a long time, waiting for this day. Right, let's do a bit of an unboxing video. I've got my table here, ready for laying up my fiberglass, cutting things out, etc. And a big box of stuff. So I've got talc. I've got 1 kilo of talc. I'll explain why in a moment. Then we've got the resin. I've gone for Ocean Epoxy Systems. This is a 2-part resin. That's the hardener. And this is the resin. Some acetone just for cleanup. Mixing cups, large mixing cups and small mixing cups. You can never have enough mixing cups when you're doing fiberglassing work. Then we've got brushes. I might have gone a bit crazy, but I've got loads of brushes because I don't intend on cleaning these and reusing them. So hopefully that's more than enough brushes than I'll ever need. I've got one of these tools for laying down the fiberglass. So once it's down in the bilge, you run this over and it pulls out all the air bubbles and pushes it down really nicely. Then you swill it off with acetone and you can reuse it next time. So I've got one of those. And then combi matting. This is called combination matting because it's literally a combination of chopped strand and woven rovings. And these two are stitched together and completely epoxy compatible, vinyl compatible, polyester compatible. But what it makes for is a very thick and very strong fabric. It's nice and pliable. You can see the stitching here, and this is the woven rovings or biaxial, and then this is the chopped strand. So that's what I intend to use on this boat. I've got loads of it, should have plenty there, and with loads left over. I do actually have some chopped strand left over from a previous boat project if I do need it. But I don't think I'm going to, because this is very, very strong and I'd like to try and use this throughout everything if I can. So that's why I've got that. And then the talc. Why have I got talc? Well, no, it's not because I might get sweaty doing this, although I might, because it can be pretty hot and sticky in there. This is to make a filler consistency using the resin. So you can mix up, using one of your mixing cups, a amount of resin, say 200 ml of resin, for instance, put the talc into there, mix it together and create a filler or a putty to the consistency that you would like. Sometimes you want just resin that's a little bit thicker if you're bonding wood together or something like that. Other times you want to create a thick texture, which I'm going to need to do when I'm putting in the bilge keel supports. And I'll explain why when we get to it, but that's what the talc's for. I've got a kilo of talc. Do have more filler powder somewhere if I need it. Hopefully this is enough, but as I say, I do have a bit more left over from a previous project in the past if I need it, but for now we don't need that. For now we don't need any of the resins. All we need is the combination matting. Right, I'm just going to tidy myself up and open this up, and we can have a look at making up some templates. Right, so I've unrolled the fabric. Now, as a general rule of thumb, well, I say a general rule of thumb, I think it's always, you lay this with the chopped strand down onto the surface you're bonding to, and the fabric, the woven roving or the biaxial, facing upwards. So the chopped strand gets a really good bond, and obviously the fabric adds to strength and is a really nice finish afterwards as well. So we're going to have one of these. Let's start with the thicker one just to make life a bit easier. So this is the underside. So, and this is the top side. So I know that I want to template this that way. Okay. So just going to draw around it. Obviously I don't want to waste cloth. So I'm going to do this as neatly as I can. And something to remember as well when you're doing this is the cloth will move. So even though we're going to make these templates, when we pick them up in a minute, it will all change shape and everything. And it's quite malleable as well. You can pull it in different directions to adjust it to fit. So I am going to come in just slightly so I can cut that rough edge off. This doesn't have to be 100% accurate. But obviously the closer you can get it, the better. And I'm going to write on that this is my port side. So I know what the template is for. And I know that this is actually the aft. And I'm going to do the same with the starboard one, which is so much thinner. It's really thin. Look at that. Let's put the two side by side. Look at that thickness. The port side is honestly twice as thick as the starboard side. It's incredible. I think this is why one of the keels is loose, because the keel is wobbling around like that, and this one's stiff. So interesting. Now again, this one, that's the underside, that's the top side. Can't actually tell which way around this one came up, because the access down on the starboard side is nowhere near as good as the port side. But it's okay. I can figure that one out once we're in there, as long as I get it the right way up on the cloth. Okay, and then we're going to write starboard on there. Right, now then, I've got an old pair of scissors for cutting out. The cloth will blunt and scissors really quickly. You can get big shears for cutting fabric, which is absolutely fantastic for fiberglass. And if you're doing lots of it, I would highly recommend some, but I think these will do the job. Let's have a little test down here in this corner. Yeah, these are perfect. So don't go out and buy fancy scissors, just some cheapy ones. They're going to get wrecked doing this job anyway. Right, this is going to take quite a long time, so I'm going to put you on time lapse now. There we go, that's our two templates cut. So we'll go up into the boat now and drop those in place, just do a little bit of dry fit and see how they look. This is an offcut, and I just wanted to show you how pliable this material is. You can pull it in any direction that you want, stretch it, but if you go too far, you start to pull it apart. Okay, so you see the strands and the fabric coming apart there. So you're going to be careful with it, but if you have gone a bit small, you can ease it, and that also means that you can ease it into corners, create little, anything you need, and it'll stay in place. So it's a very versatile material to work with. Let's go and drop these into the appropriate holes and see how I've done. I think I'll take the scissors with me in case I need trimming. All right, we're back in the port hole. I mean the port bilge. Right, let's see how my piece is done. Nice dry fit. Now then, look at that, I've made a mistake. Okay, it's not the end of the world. I am a little tiny bit short where I've trimmed and where I've feathered this in a bit, but I can manipulate the fabric and open that up a bit. And I'll add a piece in here when we're fiberglassing. Otherwise, that's okay. For the first piece, I'm not too worried about that. As I say, I can manipulate it, I can open it up a bit, and I'm going to want extra over the top. So what I'm going to do is get a Sharpie, the one that nearly went up the Hoover. Where did I put that? And I'm going to just mark where I need it to be a little bit wider and how much wider I want it to be for the second piece. Okay, so what I've done is just put some little reference points on here for myself. 5 to say 5mm, here's reference point 5 to say an extra 5mm. Here I've got a little arrow plus 90mm here. So on my second piece, I'll extend it by 90mm, which will cover that join, and it'll be as if there's no join there. Right, let's see how my starboard side is looking. All right, why did nobody tell me that I'd made a mistake there? A really silly, stupid mistake. Have a look. The port piece of cloth fits perfectly in the starboard side. I've labelled them up wrong. Oh dear. Anyway, it fits perfectly. It just needs a bit of adjustment. But look at the length. It's absolutely spot on. And if I whip round to the actual port side, the starboard piece of cloth fits perfectly in there. I thought I'd cut a bit extra off, but obviously not, because this one fits and the other one doesn't. This actually fits perfect. It doesn't need any sort of adjustment at all. This one, yes, needs a little bit of adjustment, so I'll just correct my marks on there and then go and cut out some more ready. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me that I was making that massive mistake? Right, let's go and make some corrections. Right, so colossal mistake aside, which I'm going to blame norovirus for, that very nicely made its way through our house last week. I have got my amended templates labelled up correctly this time, and I'm going to cut out a second piece so we can get the thickness. Now then. Right, port template has been made. Now I'm onto the new starboard template, which I need to make some adjustments to. So I've traced it out, and I want that point there, and that point there. Let's get my tape measure. Very approximately, I decided to go 20mm out there, 10mm here, and 10mm here. Now, just going to freehand this. and then it feathered off to basically nothing. There we go. Doesn't need to be 100% accurate. It can be adjusted really easily. Right, let's get that cut out. So I've got my 2 layers of glass now down in the port hull, as you can see. My second one has come out a lot longer. I'm not sure why, but I'm not too worried because I can leave it like this, just lipped up here, which isn't a bad thing. So I'm not too worried. I'm not going to trim it. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm happy with it like that. The 2 layers are creating a nice thickness that is corresponding nicely to the thickness of the hull here. Obviously, when we add a bit of resin, it's going to add to the thickness a bit more. So I know that's going to be a good strong base. Then we're going to go all the way over, don't forget, and up here. So I'm really happy with this. Let's move around the other side. And again, these are my 2 layers, and I'm really happy this side as well. You can see where I've extended the second piece of cloth nicely, and it actually fits in really good. Now it's slightly thicker than the original layout now, which isn't a bad thing. Lengthwise, this one's fine. So those are now ready to be laid down, and then we can start looking at putting extra cloth over the top of the whole lot. So those pieces are actually ready to epoxy into place, but I don't want to be doing that just yet, because once I start epoxying and laying up the fiberglass, I'll only have a tacky period of up to 24 hours to lay further fiberglass over the top before I have to sand and re-prep the surface. So I don't want to start laying anything down until I've got everything cut and ready, and I can get everything put down into here in one hit, with the exception of the additional supports that I'm going to put in. So what I'm going to do now is start measuring up for the extra pieces of fiberglass, which are going to go over the top of those pieces I've just put down and up the sides of the boat. Now, I've tried to do this the simplest way that I could. So I've measured the bilge spaces. So on the port side, bilge 1 aft, which is this bilge, we've got outer and inner, so I'm classing that as outer and this is inner. I've measured that as 560 long by 250 deep. So we're going 560 that way, 250 that way. And again, with the others here, the inner 570 by 200, outer in bilge 2 forward, which is in here, we've got outer as 690 long by 330 deep. So again, I'm going 690 up there, 330 deep. Now 330 is taking me from about here down here, and then I'm going to get a bit of an overlap here. And the same on this side here. My measurements of 720 by 240. So we're going all the way across here, but then 240 comes from here. There's a block of wood there, just under that block of wood, down across here, and then we get an overlap to about there or so. Not so critical this side, very critical this side. And on the other side of the boat, I've done exactly the same. I think the only difference here is in this section of bilge, I'm going further forwards because of the weakness. So I'm actually going to go beyond that steel stringer that's there with one piece, which is 1100 long. So that's going to be quite difficult. But the method that I'm going to use is basically to get the epoxy onto this surface and then bring the cloth in dry, place it on, and then wet it out in place. I'm not going to try wetting it out on the bench because I just don't have the room. So I'm going to wet this surface. It's going to be a slow mix anyway, so I'll wet this surface, bring the cloth in, gently lay it out to where I want it, and then spend time working the cloth with extra resin and the rollers and wet it down into place here. And I think on the outers, this section that you're looking at here, I'm going to do two thickness deep, I think, two layers of cloth to really get some strength. So I'm actually going to measure up for a final piece on the base, I think. So once I've put the side pieces on, I can put a final piece then on the bottom. So the base on both sides is 690 by 200, which isn't really surprising, seeing as the keels are identical. Right, so that's my cutting list now. So I need to go downstairs on the table under the boat and start cutting out all of this, ready for fiberglassing in. Great, so we've got all of our fiberglass cut, but the hard work does not stop there. I've got to take all of these into the boat and just dry fit them in place, trim them where they need trimming, cut them around things where they need cutting around things. And then at that point, we are ready to start laying these down with the epoxy resin. Let's go on board and do a dry fit and see how they're looking. I want to say a huge thank you and a massive shout out to all of my supporters. And this week, a really big thank you to Howard and Jay, who are supporting me through my Amazon wish list. They have bought some electrical wire for me, some sanding discs that are going to be needed very soon. And you're going to keep me alive because you bought me some cup of soups as well. Thank you very, very much. I have got uses for all of these. The sanding discs are definitely going to be needed, and the electrical wire is absolutely perfect for some LED lights that I've got to install into the boat for later on in the channel when we get into the electrical installation. So Howard and Jay, thank you very much. I understand you're based in my local marina as well, and you're really enjoying my videos for my insights and the work that I'm doing as you're halfway through your own boat project. So I wish you all the best and thank you very much for your kind words, and perhaps we'll bump into each other one day, either midway boat project or out on the water sailing. What I've just done off camera is lay these into the bilge and cut out around any of the original stringers or the steel work that they're hitting up against. You can see here my little cuts. It's very, very difficult for me to film that down there. But that's the port side that's done. This is all for the starboard side, so I'm going to drop that in now and do exactly the same on this side of the boat. So this is a dry fit on the starboard side. So you can see the piece is in nicely. It's fitting up here really well against the existing. It's going to sit down on the hull there within the area that I've cleaned. And then here we've got the steel framework and it's hitting up against it. So I've just drawn on it. So I'm going to trim out that area there, which will make it sit around that piece of steel nicely. Down here, it's just slotting in really well. With the resin, I can work it down into those corners like that and get a really good finish. So that's just what I'm doing now. So I'm down in the really awkward bilge now, just doing a dry fit on this piece. And well, if I come around here, I'm working in this hole here. So you can see I've had to cut around that steel. So this is a dry fit. I've made the length a bit too long, so I'm just going to cut down that black line there and shorten the piece of glass, do a bit of trimming on the bottom. But roughly speaking, that's where that's going to sit. It's a bit loose, it keeps falling, but you know, it's roughly where I want it, with some lip at the bottom here, so it lips over onto the base. And of course, this is going to be giving some real structural strength. Don't worry about this cracking here. This is going to be sorted out afterwards. This will all be retabbed. Everything else is looking good around that. We've just got to retab it now. So I'm just working on this. It's really difficult access into there, as you can see. That's where I'm working, and in here as well. So yeah, just getting everything lined up. So I'm going to finish this one. I'm going to do the same to the next piece, and then I'm going to try and put a piece in down here. That's going to be interesting. And the final piece to the puzzle. We've got another couple of cuts to do there, and then one right up there, and that will be sitting nicely. Now this one isn't really doing much, to be honest, but I wanted to put it in just for a bit of extra. And then I've got some rectangles that are going to go right down in the base on top of everything, overlapping everything, which will go in very last. You'll see those as they go in. They don't need any adjustment because they are just rectangles. So I'm going to whip this one out now, do the final trims, and I think that's all the puzzle pieces made. That is all. Oh, let's take this mask off. Oh, well, that is everything made up, and that's really exciting. These are all the pieces to the puzzle. This is everything that is going to be strengthening up the bilge keels, apart from the supports, of course. But this is going to add so much strength to the hull. So I've got my starboard pieces here and my port pieces here, nicely laid out flat. Don't want to leave them folded up because otherwise we're going to end up with creases and kinks. I've already got a few anyway. Don't really want to add to that. That has taken absolutely ages. Doesn't seem it to you, but that's 2 nights worth of work, just measuring up, making these, cutting them out, getting everything prepped. It's now too late in the evening for me to start fiberglassing. I need to make sure I've got at least a good 3 or 4 hours ahead of me to actually get these down into place. And I haven't got that. I'd be working down past midnight if I was to start this now. Plus my torch batteries are starting to go flat, so they need charging up, and I'm shattered as well. But we are ready. That is going to be it for this week's episode. But next week, you are going to see all of this fiberglass in place on the boat, which is so exciting and is a massive milestone. But that's it for this week. So thank you all very, very much for watching. Sorry about the little blip. These things happen. I was ill, and then the week before we had extremely cold weather. So I couldn't, well, I suppose I could have started cutting this out, thinking about it. I didn't think this was going to take so long. But I do apologize for the blip. But we're back on track now. Next week, fiberglassing. Really excited. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. And if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. Pop your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you all. And we'll see you in the next one.